Hey everyone. Yeah, I want to come on here while I wait for my bus and, kind of do a bit of a response to hold on for a second. But like I said, I wanted to do a response to somebody that I recently subscribed to. I can't think of her name right now. I'll provide a link at the end of the video to the video that I'm trying to respond to, I want to respond to here. And I do apologize if I'm a little out of it, or I sound like I'm out of it because I'm doing this through audio. But she talked about LGBT LGBTQ representation in animation as of late, and she talked about how sometimes the way it's being done is it shows one half of the group, portrayed as more, feminine, and the other more masculine. In other words, represented by the colors pink and blue, like boy and girl, or girl and boy, if you will, even though both are girls. And she has some good points in what she was talking about. I mean, I'm not denying, any of what she had to say. Because, it does seem a little odd that one female always has to be a little bit more butch-like, tomboy-like, while the other is still very feminine and female, and, femme fatale, if you will, and all that. But, obviously, that's how, I guess, in animation, they can get away with letting this happen. Now here's the thing. Is it still kind of taboo, for LGBTQ representation to be showcased in animation? Absolutely. Is it still taboo to be represented in comic books, meant for older readers or all ages or whatever? Kiddies, young kids and all that. Is it still kind of taboo there too? Absolutely. And the reason being is because of the fact that the people that are behind all these shows and comics in which, the LGBTQ basically, is trying to find or have some representation shown, they still have their limits. There is no doubt about it. But when you get down to it, sometimes it doesn't necessarily, need to be, exclusively showcased that something LGBTQ-wise is going to be represented, or is being built towards, or pretty much teased and then finally being acknowledged. Sometimes it just takes a little, Easter egging, sometimes a little bit of hinting, a little bit of, indication that, yeah, there is something there between these two characters besides just friendship. A good example that I've gone to many times before when I've kind of brought this up, and Ian Flynn has even admitted it in his own Bumblecast podcast at one point, is Sally Acorn and Nicole from Sonic the Hedgehog, mostly what's known as the post-Soft Retcon reboot run of the book, basically 252 to the very end, which was about like 290 or 291. And the reason he admitted to the fact that he and Aaliyah Baker, his wife, I believe, were able to get away with it as much as they did is because of the way they did it, because of the way they instituted it, if you will. Basically, long story short, they decided to make Sally into what this one girl, I can't think of her name right now, I do apologize, even though I've subscribed to her. This one girl has, pointed out in the video she did 11 months ago. They basically made Sally bisexual, but more leaning towards being lesbian, basically in favor of being with a female more than a male. Which is why, as Ian Flynn put it, they were able to get away with what they did in the comic, and mostly in the Spark of Life, 4-part miniseries of Sonic Universe, the spin-off comic of the main comic. So that right there is one way to kind of like sneak it in, if you will, even if it's not, full-blown, acknowledged or being built towards or obvious from the beginning or whatever the case may be. That's one example, as Ian Flynn put it. But that kind of an example, to me, in my opinion, set the tone for a lot of stories to come afterwards. It really did. And not just in comics and anything like that, but it set the tone, and I'm talking comics that Ian might be involved in or not, or he might have inspired other writers to, kind of take a page out of his book and do the same thing. But it's not just, people, like Ian Flynn and some of the stories that he writes for various other books besides Sonic. No, that, he has, the bit of hitness, if you will, the Easter egging of LGBTQ, in the book. I mean, right now, believe it or not, even though we've not had any true, on-page acknowledgement or indication that there's something more between them, we have had hints, very strong, obvious hints, to the reader that something is going on between Tangle and Whisper in the IDW Sonic comic that's basically more than just friendship, but they haven't really, gotten to that point yet, because I think honestly, to Ian Flynn, even though he knows he can get away with the obvious hinting and Easter egging that, he's dropping in the book when it comes to them, just like he did with, Sally and Nicole, if you will, just like with Sally and Nicole, he's not ready to, drop the bomb. He's not ready to, basically, shock the world when it comes to the IDW Sonic book, by revealing that they're together or they're falling in love with each other. Because to him, the Sonic comics, believe it or not, no matter how mature you make the stories, how dark you can make them, how dramatic, how grown up you try to, transform them into, no matter how PG you try to make them, they are still looked at, no matter who the publisher is, as a kid's comic. And by still being looked at as a kid's comic, it's still, something like, as I mentioned earlier, LGBTQ representation could still be looked at as being very taboo. And that's still something that they have to work around, because they don't know if the IDW publishers or Sega will be cool with them revealing that Tangle and Whisper could potentially, if not will, be an LGBTQ item. I know some people bring up, well, what about Arthur and what happened there? What happened with My Little Pony's Friendship is Magic last season and stuff like that? I get it, but I want you to understand something about those two moments. They waited until the final seasons, if not the final season, to make that happen. You see, they could have done both of those things. Both shows could have done both of those things long ago, but they didn't. They waited until we got to the very end of the series. I mean, when they released Ponyville Mysteries, they released that series, I should say. They released that series, of books, towards the end of Friendship is Magic's run, like in the last few seasons. And yes, it was in the books we found out about Scootaloo having LGBTQ, aunts. And then we finally got to see the LGBTQ aunts on screen, as well as in the comics later on. The point that I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen, the point that I'm getting at is the fact that, this LGBTQ representation is still very taboo. But when it does happen, it is a surprise. It is a shock. It is something that gets people talking. I mean, when the people behind Legend of Korra came out and said that Korra and that other girl were indeed officially an item, because of the way the show ended and the way they went into the afterlife together or whatever, they waited. Here's the thing, they waited to the end to officially say that. They waited till the show was over to come out on social media and say, yeah, these two are a couple. And the reason they waited is because Legend of Korra, even though it was distributed by Nickelodeon, was still looked at as a kids show, and being a kids show, it was still very taboo for something like that to happen. But I get where this girl's coming from when she's saying the things she is. And that's why hearing this reply, I'm trying to, hearing this reply, and again, I do apologize, I'm a little tired. Like I said, I just got off work today and I'm waiting for my bus. This is why when, Ian Flynn came out, on his Bumblecast podcast and said what he did about the fact that he and Aaliyah got away with, the LGBTQ, sorry about that, but like I said, this is why Ian Flynn came out and said on his Bumblecast podcast, that he was surprised of how, much they got away, him and Aaliyah got away with pretty much, showcasing, if not blatantly coming out and saying it, but showcasing hints through scenes and moments and all that, Easter eggs of Sally and Nicole probably being more than just friends. Or at least, indicating something that there was going to be something more between them. Something on the LGBTQ level. And it's very similar, and it's very similar when you think about it to the writers of Legend of Korra coming out and saying after the show's over, Korra and this one other girl, I can't think of her name, were an item. Even though there was a lot of scenes, moments, and Easter eggs and hints throughout the series towards the end that there was something more than just a friendship between them, more than just a regular bond between them. The writers waited to the very end. They waited to the very end to make, that clear. They waited to the very end. And I don't blame them for doing that. I don't blame them for doing that either way. I don't blame Ian Flynn, believe it or not, for waiting until Sparkle Life was over. Because obviously they all knew that even though they weren't coming out straight and saying, yeah, these two are, a couple, or these two, couples in each of our shows or each of our products, of certain franchises or tied to certain franchises, these two couples, Sally and Nicole and Korra and this other girl, I should say, hey, yeah, they are lesbian couples, they are LGBTQ couple. Even though they could have done that, they didn't. They waited because they knew if they did, this is what I was trying to get at there, but I was trying to get at, again, I do apologize, I'm a little I'm tired, I work today, and everything, but what I'm trying to get at is the reason they didn't come out and, come straight out and say it, when it was happening, is because they knew, they knew basically there was a good chance that Nickelodeon, when it comes to Legend of Korra, and Archie Comics and Sega would pull the plug. And they didn't want that to happen. They didn't want none of the hard work they were trying to do, or, to make Legend of Korra great, a decent spin-off, if you will, of Avatar, or Sonic Universe and the soft retcon reboot. They didn't want to make any of that for naught. They didn't want to, make that go to waste. So what did they do? They basically did what they had to do. They did what they had to do. They waited. But here's what's interesting about someone like an Ian Flynn and the writers behind Legend of Korra. Well, after they waited, they opened and inspired a lot of fanfic writers out there to take it to another level. Not just official writers on official, products, official shows and comics based on or associated or tied to certain established franchises or anything like that. They opened the door and inspired fanfic writers, fanfic writers, people just like, ordinary people like me, to come out and do stories that involve LGBTQ, even if, it's just something that we know is in the realm of fantasy and never could happen. A good example is one of the stories I put up recently, which was Queen's Delight. This is a Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic Underground kind of crossover. Well, basically Archie Sonic Underground crossover. Well, it involved Queen Alina, Sonic's mom from Sonic Underground, getting it on with Queen Alicia, Sally's mom from Archie Sonic. And doing it in a way to where at the end, it basically indicates that these two are now an item. These two have become a couple, if you know what I mean. And it's not just, it's not just that as well. I mean, you take a look at, you take a look or you hear about, I should say, some of the web comics that you see featured at PAL Comics, or you see get featured at places known for distributing adult comics, like, fan-oriented adult comics, like, basically I'm going to say it's, for short, it's MHC. I'm just going to say that's what it is. It's MHC, okay, and the middle word is the adult word for adult anime. The M is for my, and the C is for comics. But I'm not going to say what the other word is in the middle because I don't want this to get limited, availability, if you catch my drift. Well, limited suitability or monetization or whatever. But what I'm getting at here is the fact that, you can even look at those kind of comics that are featured at PAL Comics, or, like I said, that one website that features all kinds. And a good example, like when it comes to Sonic, of LGBTQ being represented, one of the best examples to me that caught my eye and caught everybody's eye when it happened was called A Helping Hand. Now, somebody had showed me this comic because they know I'm a fan of Sonic and they wanted my opinion. So they showed me the comic and I saw it, and I was like, wow, this is this is a different direction. This is a different take for Sally and her mom from the Archie book. Because basically because like I said, like I was saying, my alarm went off there. I was, timing myself for when my bus arrives so I can get there on time, or get to the bus stop on time. But when I saw this, I was like, wow, this is definitely a different direction to take Sally and her mom when it comes to romance and all that. Because not only did it involve, because like I was saying, it was kind of a surprise when I saw it, because I'm thinking, wow, this is a different direction to take Sally and her mom, because, it not only did it involve LGBTQ and lesbianness, but it involved incest of the lesbian kind. That's right, incest of the lesbian kind. In other words, Sally getting it on with her mom, if you know what I mean. And it's not the only one that was done in PAL Comics either, that you can find at various other sites. There's one called Burning Love between Blaze and Amy, and many others. There's one that is, not, a PAL Comics, illustration, if you will, but it's done by somebody, and it's seen at the MHC site, and it's called Cross Circuits, and it involves Sally and Nicole. The point is, when I look at in my opinion, when I see that Ian Flynn, when I see and hear Ian Flynn come out, and even before him, the writers of the Legend of Korra come out and say, yeah, this is what happened, at the end, yes, it's confirmed that these couples are LGBTQ, or at least in Sally and Nicole's case, hinted that they could be. To me, it opened the door. it opened the door for LGBTQ representation of the lesbian kind to be truly represented in a lot of fanfic works. And I know they've been represented before in fanfic works, don't get me wrong, but to me, this is like, probably the strongest indication by any official writer of anything that, in my opinion, opened the door and inspired other writers of the fan fiction kind, people like me, to implement it into the stories, no matter how creative that story could be. If you know what I mean, how creative, imaginative, how weird, whatever the case may be, it could be. It really inspired us, well, not me, I should say, but others to start doing that in their stories as well. Even if it wasn't like the main, NFSW intimacy of moments. It became one of, if not the center point of that intimacy, or of the intimacy moments in the stories, if you know what I mean. But anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to do this reply. My bus is going to be here in just a little bit. That's not my bus right now, but it's coming up in a bit, hopefully, without delay. But again, I just wanted to come on here, like I said, give you my thoughts on, on what, I can't think of a name and I do apologize. Again, I'll provide a link at the end of what she had to say on the LGBTQ representation and lesbianism and all that. Just wanted to give you my thoughts on it and how, I do agree with most of what she said and everything, but also kind of give you my thoughts on its representation and how sometimes it has to be snuck in there, very slyly by the writers. And even though the writers won't come out and say it right off the bat, later on there's a good chance they will let you know about it. And, that's cool with me. It's really cool with me. But anyway, though, guys, I just wanted to do this a little bit of a review. Well, not review, but reply. Like I said, I'm tired. I worked. I'm waiting for my bus here. But let me know what your thoughts are. I do apologize for not knowing what your name is, but if you could reply back to me, it'd be great to give me your thoughts on what I had to say. And until next time, guys, let me know how you feel. Comment in the live chat during the premiere where super chats and super stickers are open. It would be appreciated. Also, check me out at Venmo at Brian-Warmer-2 and at Cash App at BWRoses98 to help support me financially in both of those areas as well. So until next time, guys, I am out.